Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the stage Global Lead of Digital Signage and Kiosk with Google, Chris Lytle.
All right, folks, real excited to be here, and like David, I was very excited to have the opportunity to get some walk-on music. And my daughter and I spent some time this week, probably about 2 hours, listening to a lot of songs, and the best we came up with was Foggy Mountain Breakdown, so we determined it was probably best to leave it to the professionals, so thanks so much for that. But thanks to David and the entire Four Winds team for having us. We are very much newcomers to visual communications. We've only been at it for 2 or 3 years. And we think this industry is about to really take off in a meaningful way, and we hope to contribute to that. And it's funny because I had this global lead of digital signage technology, and like 3 years, I didn't even know what 3 years ago, I didn't even know what it was, right? So we are definitely newcomers. We know a lot about the internet. We know a lot about technology. We're learning a lot about visual communications, and we want to talk today a little bit about where we see the industry going, and also the role that we hope to play in supporting all of you as you bring your visual communications business forward. So, because I'm a lazy presenter and a history buff, I'm going to start with torturing an analogy for a bit. I'm going to make a comparison between the auto industry and the signage industry, or the visual communications industry. And the idea of a self-driving car, or an automobile, has been around for quite some time because people saw the steam engine, they saw the wheels, they had their carriages, they had their bicycles. They saw all these parts come together, and we could make a car out of this, right? Although probably the big giant wheels didn't make a lot of sense, and the little thin wheels don't make a lot of sense. But by the same token, digital signage has been kicking around as an idea, or visual communications, for quite some time. And we have Tom Cruise here walking through Minority Report, and we've got some cool ideas there, but likewise, there's a lot of things here that don't make any sense, like the idea of this disembodied head kind of shouting at people as you walk by. Probably not a really good idea. And also, anybody who's seen these translucent screens know that they're really hard to see anything on if they're not against a wall. So, good ideas and concepts. Maybe the early thoughts about them really weren't on par. Then there's been some early attempts as well, right? Look at this wonderful car here. It's magnificent, right? It's got probably 18 cylinders, weighs 40 tons. The challenge with it, though, is that old boy here is probably waiting for a horse to come tow him away because these things were very unreliable, right? They would break down constantly. They were very proprietary. There was not a real work base of folks who knew how to fix these things. And they were also insanely expensive, right? As a result, they really weren't practical and were frequently thought of as a rich man's toy. I think we can see where there might be some analogies to this in visual communications. Where the early attempts, there were just issues, right? People had problems with it. It was early days. And I'm not bagging on Windows here. I mean, they're great guys, and I'm a big Microsoft fan. I mean, and back in the day, that's what you had, right? Just like people make fun of dads for always falling off ladders, it's because we're always the guys going up the ladders, right? So I appreciate Microsoft going up that ladder early for us. But early attempts really kind of scared some people away. This isn't going to take off. This isn't reliable. I can't build a business around this. So what happened, right? What was the turning point here? And the real turning point was the introduction of the Model T Ford, right? Fantastic car. And everybody always kind of goes back to the fact that it was a $300 car, right? That's what really drove it. It was a very inexpensive car, but the much more important part of this car was that it was reliable. Right? You could build your life around this car with the expectation it was going to turn on in the morning. And as a result, it became practical for a car to be anywhere a car might be useful, whether it's hauling crops in, bringing them to market, or driving an ambulance around the San Francisco earthquake. It was just practical for a car to be anywhere a car might be needed. And then by the same token, right, we've got this nice modern version of visual communications, best exemplified by Four Winds. It's affordable, it's reliable, right? And you can count on it. And as a result, all of a sudden now it makes sense for visual communications to be anywhere that it might actually be useful without fear of it not working. And I'm actually going to bust out a little prop here. So this is a Ford manual for the Model T Ford, and I got it on eBay for like $8. And the very first thing that it says, right, in the foreword, and I don't have my bifocals on, so excuse me, but it's significant. Shit, I can't even read this. Let me summarize. What it says is that the nice thing about the Ford automobile is that you don't need to know the mechanical, technical specifics in order to operate the thing, right? And as a result, a layman can operate this car without being a mechanic. And by the same token now, with wonderful solutions from Four Winds and others, it actually has gotten to the point where visual communications can be managed by people who aren't necessarily technologists. And we need to get that moving even further because we got to get it out of the realm of the geeks and into the realm of the folks with the nose rings, right? Because they're going to come up with the cool, creative ideas, probably better than we will. So, and for those of you that have been in visual communications for a long time, you guys know this stuff, right? What's going on? What are these big changes? The first thing is the cost of displays. In 2004, the cost of putting up a 40-inch display was prohibitive for a lot of folks, right? And obviously now we've seen very steep decrease in pricing. And then likewise on content management, still lots of clunky systems out there, clunky CMSs that aren't internet enabled. They're kind of like this, wacky Windows push-pull kind of thing. Or on the other hand, we've got still a lot of content being distributed by USB sticks. And there's a major retailer I was talking to not too long ago, and they have 13,000 screens that they're updating with USB sticks, which is insane to me. I just can't believe people are still doing that, particularly when there is such a large variety of affordable and flexible cloud-based content management tools that are available. And then the part that Google plays a pretty big part in, which is kind of getting away from the expensive and unreliable devices and getting to much more affordable, much more reliable devices, right? We've got our Android devices, we've got our Chrome devices, there's the gigabyte devices that are out there that are wonderful. So for you as visual communications professionals, you have the opportunity to choose from a wide range of much better infrastructure than anything that was available previously. So this is what we all want to see, right? I mean, look what Practicality did for the Model T Ford, or for the auto industry. The auto industry went back, way before 1903. People tend to think that it started with the Model T Ford, but it didn't. And along this range, there were like 350 automobile manufacturers at this time. But when you have an affordable and reliable and hence practical option, that's what drove the whole market, right? And there was a lot of consolidation that came along with that as well, right? We went from 350 car manufacturers to less than 20 in the span of about 15 years. I think that's going to happen here, right? We all know that. We see consolidation coming. There's a lot of very small companies out there that don't have the infrastructure that a Four Winds does. They're probably going to fall off the map to some degree. And then we've also seen a lot of acquisitions lately as well, right? So I think it can be scary for folks when that happens, but it leads to a much healthier market. And torturing another analogy, in the early days of oil manufacturing, there were way too many people that were in on it. Anybody who had a pickaxe and could see, oil in their backyard was generating oil, and there was way too much of it out there. And John Rockefeller went ahead and said, you know what, we're all killing ourselves here by undercutting each other's pricing. There is a glut of product on the market. We need to consolidate this, right? And maybe went a little bit too far with Standard Oil. But at the end of the day, that consolidation to a reasonable sized industry helped advance the industry, and I think that's what we're going to see here as well. And Standard Oil, boy, how happy they were. They were in the kerosene business before the car got big, right? And it turned into a much bigger thing for them. So very exciting. So mass deployment of technology can lead to a lot of ancillary businesses, right? In particular with automobiles, we had the introduction of gas stations, right? Every town's got several of these now that employs millions of people. Brand new business that didn't exist and had no reason to be before the advent of the car. But the other thing about it, though, is that in addition to just creating new businesses, it gave people the opportunity to expand their existing businesses. And Coca-Cola is a great example of this. We all like to have this image of Coca-Cola being, everybody learned about it at the local soda shop. There was a fountain guy there at the paper hat. Not really. They got distributed through gas stations, right? Gas stations created that vehicle for Coca-Cola to expand to a whole new market. And we see the same opportunities here, right? I think there's a number of times today where we talked about some of the challenges of getting content together, right? I think our Orlando Magic presenter was talking about this, that like the creative agencies don't understand the nuances of this. They just don't get it, right? Isn't this not what they do? They want to do it though, and they want, they're looking for new ways to increase revenue. I had a meeting with a chief creative officer at a really big agency a couple of weeks ago, and we walked him through all this, and he's like, this is fantastic. I mean, like, what are we going to put on the screens? And I was like, well, you're the creative guy, right? Like, I'm the technology guy. So it wasn't Zenith or RCA who figured out what the programming was on TVs. It was the ad agencies that figured out what the programming was on TVs, right? So we need these agencies to step up. And when we talk to them, it's a new screen, right? It's not TV. It's not out of home, traditional billboards. It's not a phone screen. It's not an internet screen. It's a brand new screen, brand new opportunity. And again, those guys got plenty of guys with nose rings that are going to be happy to jump all over this stuff and maybe bill pretty well for that. And then as far as expanding existing businesses, there's tons of opportunities for visual communications to allow others to expand their businesses as well. I'm working with a number of pretty big newspapers right now that are looking to expand their advertising base into taxi tops, right? It makes a lot of sense. If I happen to be a big New York newspaper and I already have an ad sales force that's out there selling impressions and all that good stuff, what better way to add to that local mix than to have advertising in conjunction with content on taxi tops as well? So the next thing is borrowing what works, right? I mean, it's not as if automobiles started from scratch. There was this opportunity to take all the stuff that came with horse carriages before that, and you can see that the earliest cars really were just horse carriages with motors to some degree. Now, what's interesting in this model is that there's an opportunity for visual communications to draw a lot more from what works online, right? The difference is that this was before the car, and we emerged, the mature online advertising and content space emerged at the same time that you guys were figuring all this stuff out, right? So, David's up here showing pictures from 2004. In 2004, there really wasn't massive broadband penetration, right? And now it's ubiquitous. And not only that, it's everywhere. But there's a lot of opportunity to take what works online and bring it to visual communications. First among these, personalization, right? Personalization makes all types of communication much more relevant. The more that I can show that person that I'm going to give them the content that they need, all the better. So when we talk about KPIs, there are certain KPIs that David really cares about, and wouldn't it be wonderful as he walked by that screen, it was showing him the information that really mattered to him, right? That's the next phase of all this. And there's targeting, right? How do we seek out the audiences that we want? Right now, I can go to DoubleClick or Ad Exchange or AdWords, and if I want to buy 18 to 35-year-old men in a certain geographic area, I can do that. People want to be able to do that in digital as well, right? It's digital out of home as well. Measurement. We talked a lot about measurement to some degree today, but also I think a lot of the questions that related to measurement kind of stated that we're not doing as much with this data as we possibly could, right? And that's something that we're pretty good at Google. We're big fans of measurement. Pretty much every website is measuring their traffic with Google Analytics. And we want to be able to get that same level of analytical capability to the layman that we do online in the visual communication space. And optimization, right? So I'm working on a really nice project right now with Coca-Cola, and they've got budget for one creative implementation for 3 months. Right? Well, what if that creative sucks? Right? I mean, and how do we know it sucks, right? You need the measurement to drive the optimization, right? And we're very good at this at Google, where we can optimize dynamically, taking the data that comes back and then putting better content in front of that user to make a better experience for that person. And then finally, standardization, right? Standardization might be the most important thing out of all these. I'm old enough to have been around for the original dot-com bubble. And in the beginning, there was this kind of debate between whether or not the walled garden effect was going to be the way people were going to go, or if we're going to go to a browser-based world. And there were companies like AOL that kind of bought Time Warner, right, somehow, and MSN. And these were software packages you would download, and they were completely proprietary. They would push the content to you bit by bit as you needed it. There was an alternative thought process, which was, well, why don't we use standard HTML standard web technologies like HTML5, right? Use some standard service providers at the top, and really open this thing up in that way. And one thing that's really exciting in the online space is, as an advertiser, I can put my creative up there, I can pick my targets, and I don't have to know or care what the technology is that actually delivers that content. That is hugely liberating, right? And when we talk about some of the challenges that the Magic has as far as rendering all this video, it's all very proprietary right now to some extent, right? What can we do to kind of open this up so that an advertiser can put out content and know that it's going to play great on all the devices that are in that network? Or if I'm a creative agency, I know that if I build on certain technologies, standard web technologies, it's going to be able to play in a variety of places as well. So the evolution obviously is never going to stop, right? And there's a company that's looking at self-driving cars. And likewise, we're also looking at some other stuff too. And I think David hit on this, the importance of the mobile piece of all this, right? I think this is probably the most exciting evolution that we see. And again, I'm doing a lot of work with Coke, and they're really good at measuring stuff, right? Testing stuff and measuring stuff. And one thing they found very clearly is that visual communications is powerful, and mobile marketing is powerful. Combining the two is incredibly more powerful, right? The one drives the other. They're completely symbiotic, right? And we're not doing that yet in the way that we're going to. This is an area where Google is bringing a lot to the table, right? One thing that's kind of an ugly secret is that people don't download apps, right? I go talk to CIOs at major companies all the time, and they're like, yeah, man, we invested a fortune in this app, and we got 5 downloads, right? So it's useless. In that regard, there's obviously some great apps that are out there, like the Marriott app. If I'm a regular Marriott traveler, I'm going to need that app. If I'm a regular Delta flyer, I'm going to need that app. If I'm a regular Uber user, I'm going to need that app. However, not everybody is downloading all apps for all occasions. We've got 2 technologies that are pretty compelling in that regard. One is called Eddystone, right? And it's a public project. It's on the web right now if you want to take a peek at it. Eddystone is a cross-platform mechanism for communicating with mobile phones. And if you guys are familiar with the way that beacons generally work, they basically just ping out I'm here, I'm here, I'm here, and then your app's going to recognize that you're here and take action based on that. What Eddystone allows is for you to say, I'm here, I'm here, I'm here, and this is what I've got to say, right? So it's a lot more intelligent. I can push a message out to somebody instead of just noting that they're in that location. And I can push that message out via URL, right? And have it show up on their phone, and they can click on that and go off to a web page. Or I can deep link directly into an app, right? Which is really critical. I mean, Marriott is building so many wonderful capabilities into their app, but people want to be able to get to that part of the app really quickly, and they need to know that it's there. So where Eddystone and our other technology nearby, our beacon registration service would combine to allow with the Go board is, I walk up to that Go board, and it looks and it goes, oh, does this person have the Marriott app or not? If they don't have the Marriott app, they're going to get a notification on their phone saying hey, you should really download this app. It's going to make your life easier. And for all those folks that have had trouble getting people to download their apps, that's really compelling, right? This is where you should know about this app. I'm going to tell you about this app right now. On the other hand, if the person already does have the Marriott app, what we can do is send out a little notification on their screen that says, hey, welcome, click here to go into your self-check-in. They do one click, they go right to it launches the app, it goes right to the right part of the app, and it takes out 5 or 6 clicks, right? And back in the old bad days of dot-com bubble 1, all we talked about was how many clicks does it take to get you where you want to go, right? And so for all these apps, the opportunity to have one-click access to all these robust functionalities at the right time is really powerful. I mean, so think about a beacon in the front of the Go board in the front of the house for people that are just arriving, and we're going to tell them about the great Marriott capability for self-check-in. But maybe I go further back into the hotel in an area where the person's probably already checked in. Then that message can be like, oh yeah, click here to find out what's great in the neighborhood and access our mobile concierge, right? So deep linking into the right part of the app at the right time, really critically. And how does this all come together in a meaningful way? So I'm going to use an advertising example, but you're sitting at the bus stop, right? And they put this ad for the Flash up, and you're like, oh, you know what? I haven't really thought about that. That might actually be a good show. I might want to be interested in it. A little notification shows up on your phone, and it says, hey, if you want to be interested in the Flash on Facebook, click here, right? So one click, and then I've noted that I want more information about the Flash, and then that's going to show up in my Facebook feed from that time on. And as an advertiser, how much is an advertiser going to pay for that? I mean, that's hugely valuable real estate, right? But also, it has a lot more implications as well in the kind of the corporate visual communication space. We talk about the KPI boards, right? And we had that great board that showed the pipeline and the big win with the confetti and all that. Wouldn't it be great if at the same time it would be a one-click into the Salesforce to get to that exact view so you can drill in for deeper information, right? So being able to deep link into the app is a really key capability. And also, what this interaction back and forth allows too is if in a trusted environment, you can actually find out a little bit about that user in advance to better personalize and better target the message that's going to go to that user. So I got this big Orwellian thing up here with Google on it, and I just want to take a second to kind of talk about what our role is, right? Because it's funny, I've talked to a lot of people in the industry, and I've had a number of people who actually said, well, yeah, you guys had this big thing coming where you're going to take over everything and this and that. And it's funny, if people really knew what's going on inside Google, they really wouldn't be worried about it. The analogy I'll make with Google is that we're kind of like an elephant, right? Like if you've never seen an elephant and you're standing behind an elephant, the back end of it, you have no idea that thing's got a tusks and a snout in the front, all that. At Google, all of our product groups are all kind of looking at our own little hawk of the elephant. And it's really you guys outside of Google that probably have a better view of what we can bring to the table than we do. And that's actually been the case with Coke. I mean, they've come to us and said, oh yeah, you need to tie together this Eddystone stuff with Chrome. And we're like, oh yeah, that's a great idea, let's do that. So to David's point, we love to collaborate and innovate with our customers and partners as well. So there is no grand scheme to take over visual communications whatsoever. And I think when people want to think about the role that Google's going to play in this moving forward, think about how we operate online, right? When we're online, we don't build CMS solutions, right? We don't build content. We build Chrome browser that people can target, and we've got great cloud-based technologies that people can use to enhance the experience, whether it's ad-serving networks, content delivery networks, analytics tools, all those things. That's what we bring, right? So if you want to get the best of Google, you're going to be able to get the best of Google by working with Four Winds because we're collaborating with them very closely on all these things. Because again, we only know the parts that we know, and what we're going to do is combine everything that we've learned at Google in the online space with the 12 years of experience, and I hope I'm not selling you guys short, that Four Winds brings to the table as well, right? So we're never going to be a Four Winds, just like we're never going to be an Adobe Experience Manager or WordPress in the online space. What we've done, though, is by creating standardization and key technologies that undergird a lot of these projects, we've enabled a lot of other folks to grow that space and expand their businesses as well. And that's very much the role that we want to play here. So the other thing that we bring to the table, in addition to generally just great technology, the other thing that we bring to the table is we're real evangelists for this space right now. We've got the ear of pretty much every CMO in the world right now. When they do studies on what companies, where they see innovation coming from, we kill it. We're viewed as that innovative company. So we've got a lot of senior folks that want to hear from us on what they should be doing. And I do a ton of executive briefings. And what's really interesting is we'll run through all the great things you can do with mobile and all the things you can do with Google Apps and all the other great stuff we've got. Visual communication is almost always Oh yeah, I want to talk more about that, right? So we're going out there, we're beating the drums, we're letting people know that this is a market that's real, and that all the great things that we do with them in an online space, we want to be able to do with them in visual communications as well. So not looking to take everything over, just to be clear, but absolutely looking to partner with you guys to build your businesses and build our business at the same time. So that's about all I got. I don't know if anyone's got any questions or... Must have been good. What's up, Scott?
Hey, Chris, how you doing?
Doing good, man.
Hey, does Google tie all of this together, or do they really look at partners like Forwinds to sort of bring this together in a solution? Is that what?
Absolutely, because going back to the elephant, right? I mean, like, it's been a fair amount of work on my part to even tie together all of our various product teams, right? And just when I first started calling some of these guys, they're like, who the hell are you and what do you want? But again, when you got big customers like Coke that come back and say, this is what we want, it gets everybody in line. So what we've got is all these functional expertises, right? We've got functional expertise with beacons, we've got functional expertise with devices, functional expertise with advertising and content delivery. We're not going to tie all that together. Forwards is going to tie all that together, right? So I work with guys like Greg Newman, we're figuring all this out, right? It's not ready to go today. Some of it is, but you're going to see a lot more of it coming forward, right? Because at the end of the day, we want to make visual communications as robust and exciting an industry as the online advertising space has been for us as well. All right. Well, thank you all for having me. Appreciate it.